Margaret Wilson opened her eyes slowly as the loud ringing of her alarm clock filled her tiny apartment in the suburbs of New York. She groaned softly, not ready to face another busy day, and reached out to hit the snooze button. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet she had grown used to. She got out of bed, wrapped herself in her worn robe, and shuffled to the kitchen to make a simple breakfast, just a piece of toast and a cup of coffee, like she did every morning. After eating, she changed into her usual work clothes, nothing fancy, just a plain blouse and dark pants. She grabbed her bag and walked quickly to the train station to catch the commuter train into the city. Her job as a clerk at an insurance company wasn't exciting, but it paid the bills. To anyone on the outside, Margaret's life seemed boring and ordinary. But there was something her family, and even her co-workers, didn't know about her. Margaret had a secret life online. She was the person behind a popular YouTube channel called Healing Hearts. On that channel, she spoke about emotional abuse, healing, and self-worth. Her gentle voice and honest words touched the hearts of thousands. Some of her videos had been viewed millions of times. People from all over the world sent her messages, thanking her for helping them feel seen, heard, and understood. Despite all this, Margaret had never told her family. To them, she was just the quiet, awkward daughter who never quite met their expectations. Her father, Robert Wilson, was a powerful man. He owned a well-known real estate company called Wilson Estates. He had built luxury houses and communities all over upstate New York. He was proud of his success and expected everyone around him to be just as perfect. Growing up, Margaret had often felt like she was never good enough. If she got a 95 on a test, her father would ask why she didn't get 100. If she showed interest in helping people or standing up for others, he would call it a waste of time. Her mother, Evelyn, had once been a beautiful fashion model. Even now, she looked graceful and elegant, always perfectly dressed, always with a polite smile on her face. But behind her beauty was a cold heart. She cared deeply about appearances and social standing. To her, being a woman meant being admired, respected, and married well. When Margaret had shown more interest in social work and emotional healing than in academics or fashion, Evelyn had been deeply disappointed. "You're wasting your potential," she would say, shaking her head. Margaret's younger sister, Victoria, was everything their parents had hoped for. She was smart, stylish, and confident. She worked as the public relations director for their father's company and had a glamorous lifestyle. She was engaged to James Anderson, a man from a wealthy and respected family. Victoria was the golden child, the favorite daughter, and she made sure Margaret knew it. Their relationship had always been tense. Victoria would often make little comments to remind Margaret that she didn't measure up. That morning, Margaret checked her phone and saw a new message from Victoria. It was about the upcoming wedding. "You still haven't replied. I hope you're not planning to ruin my special day. Don't talk about your miserable divorce in front of everyone. James's family is refined." Margaret let out a long, tired sigh. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She stared at the message for a while, then gave a small, bitter smile. Of course, Victoria would say something like that. 2 years ago, Margaret had ended her 5-year marriage with David. Her family believed the reason was simple: she couldn't have children, and David had left her because of it. They often blamed her, calling her broken and pitiful, but the truth was far more complicated, and no one in the family had ever bothered to ask. Margaret looked up at the wall near her window. There, arranged neatly, were several certificates, awards, and plaques from mental health organizations, charities, and YouTube itself. She had built not just a channel, but a whole nonprofit group to help people like her, people who had suffered in silence and found strength in healing. But her family didn't know about any of it. She walked over to her small desk in the corner of the room and sat down. She took a deep breath and began typing a reply to the wedding invitation. "Of course I'll attend. I'm also making special preparations for the family." After sending the message, Margaret opened a special app on her phone. The screen lit up with the words, "Healing Hearts Live, ready to stream." She stared at it for a moment. Her heart beat a little faster, but she smiled gently. She knew what she had to do. There was a reason she had decided to attend her sister's wedding. She had a plan. Her family thought her ex-husband, David, had failed after the divorce, that he was a loser who hadn't done anything with his life. But that wasn't true. In fact, David was now a successful executive at a fast-growing tech company. The real reason they separated had nothing to do with children, and everything to do with Margaret choosing herself after years of emotional pain. Margaret walked over to her closet and carefully took out a navy blue dress. It wasn't flashy, But it was elegant and classy. It was the kind of dress that spoke quietly but carried strength. She ran her fingers over the fabric and nodded to herself. This wedding wasn't just about her sister, it was also about her. It was time to stop hiding. It was time for her family to finally see who she really was. Victoria's perfect day was falling apart, piece by piece. Her wedding, which was supposed to be beautiful and flawless, was now full of whispers and shocked faces. She looked at James, hoping for some support, but he just stood there, staring into the distance, looking confused and unsure. "Margaret, why?" Victoria finally asked, her voice shaking. "Why would you do this? This is my wedding." Margaret looked at her younger sister, her face calm but serious. "For years, you've mocked me," she said softly. "You laughed at my life, called me a failure, and made me feel small so you could feel big. Today, you went too far. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." David stepped beside Margaret and gently took her hand. His voice was calm but strong. "We've been collecting proof," he said, "messages, recordings, and all the ways your family treated Margaret badly. We have it all, and now, Margaret is finally telling the truth, live, to millions of people." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of strength and freedom. She took a deep breath and spoke again. "For a long time, I thought I didn't matter. I believed I was weak, but not anymore. Today, I'm speaking for myself, and for anyone else who's ever felt like they didn't have a voice. You're not alone, you matter, and your voice has power." David gave her a proud smile. He had once felt guilty for not protecting her, but now, he was proud to stand beside her. Across the room, Robert and Evelyn sat frozen, their faces pale. The perfect family image they had built for years was now broken, crumbling in front of everyone. The whole wedding hall was quiet, but online, Margaret's live video had already gone viral. Thousands were watching, commenting, and sharing her words. Suddenly, Robert stood up, his face red with rage. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You just want attention. Margaret, you're always playing the victim. None of us ever hurt you." Margaret calmly looked at him. "Really? Then what about this?" She tapped her phone, and a recording started to play. It was her voice as a young teenager. In the background, Robert's angry voice yelled, "You're just stupid. Why can't you be like Victoria? She's younger and already better than you. You're a disgrace to this family." The room was stunned into silence. When the recording stopped, Robert said nothing. Evelyn quickly stood up and tried to smooth things over. "That's not fair. That was just taken out of context. Robert was just being strict. We were trying to make her stronger. We loved her." Margaret shook her head sadly. "Love? Did you ever hug me? Did you ever tell me you were proud of me?" She pointed at a screen showing clips of her YouTube channel, her nonprofit work, and her speeches. "I've helped millions of people. I've written books, spoken at events, started a foundation, but you never even knew, because you never cared to ask." Whispers moved through the crowd. Some guests began to stand up and leave. James's parents looked uncomfortable and angry. James's father stood. "What kind of family drama is this? We don't want to be part of this mess." Robert tried to speak to him, but he raised his hand. "No, thank you, we're done here." Margaret looked around the room and spoke again. "This isn't drama, this is truth, and I'm taking legal action. I've already spoken with lawyers. I've been preparing a case for emotional abuse." She held up her phone again, showing an email from a law firm. "My lawyers say I have more than enough evidence. A lawsuit is ready to go." Robert's face turned pale. As a businessman, he knew what this meant for his company. He tried to change his tone. "We're family, Margaret. Family should fix things privately." Margaret gave a small smile. "Now you remember we're family?" She continued broadcasting the live video. Then she turned to David. "Real family isn't just blood, it's about love and respect, and David has shown me what that means." Then something surprising happened. James stood up and stepped away from Victoria. Slowly, he walked toward Margaret. "I'm not marrying into this family," he said firmly, looking at Victoria. Victoria's face turned white. "What? No, she's lying. Margaret's just jealous." James shook his head. "I've seen how you talk about her. I ignored it before, but not anymore. Today, I saw who you really are. I can't be with someone who treats others like that." He turned to Margaret. "Thank you for your courage. You're inspiring." The room was silent again. Victoria began to cry. Her makeup was smudged, and she looked lost. Margaret took another deep breath. There's one last thing I need to say. It's about my divorce and infertility. She looked at David, who gave her a nod. I'm not infertile. That wasn't the reason for our divorce. The truth is, David left because he couldn't protect me from my family. David nodded sadly. I was afraid. I couldn't stand up to them, and I left her. It was my biggest regret. Margaret continued. I had medical tests done. I'm perfectly healthy. But Victoria, you inherited Dad's condition. It's you who's infertile. Gasps spread across the room. Victoria stood frozen. That's a lie, she yelled. Margaret spoke gently. I know you and James have been trying, but the condition only affects girls in our family. Dad passed it down. It's a fact. Robert dropped into his seat, shaking. His biggest secret was now out in the open. Victoria turned to her parents. Is that true? Evelyn couldn't answer. She covered her face with her hands. Margaret continued. You blamed me for everything. You said I was broken, but I never was. Now, the room was nearly empty. James and his parents were leaving. Margaret turned to the camera and smiled. The truth hurts sometimes, but it sets us free. I've told my truth, and now, I am free. David stood proudly beside her. Some members of her online community, who had come to support her, surrounded her in a protective, loving circle. That day changed everything. 1 year later, at a busy bookstore in New York City, a huge crowd had gathered. People lined up around the building for Margaret Wilson's book signing. Her book Silent No More had become a bestseller. Margaret was now a well-known advocate for people who had suffered emotional abuse. Her Healing Hearts Foundation had helped thousands. She gave talks on TV and at events across the country. Next to her was David. They hadn't remarried, but they worked together, ran Healing Hearts, and shared a deep friendship. Ready for the lecture tour? David asked. Margaret smiled. 12 cities. I'm more than ready. Her office was now in a tall building with a view of Central Park. She often looked out at the city and thought about how far she'd come. Her family had changed too. Robert's company had fallen. No one wanted to work with him after the truth came out. He barely left his home anymore. Evelyn had been pushed out of high society. Her perfect image had been broken. Her invitations stopped coming. And Victoria? After James ended their engagement, she left town. Margaret hadn't heard from her in months. Until one day, Margaret's assistant knocked on her office door. Margaret, someone's here to see you. It was Victoria. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes anymore. She wore jeans, a simple sweater, and looked tired, but human. Can I come in? She asked softly. Margaret was surprised but nodded. Of course. Victoria sat down slowly. Her voice shook. I read your book, she said. It was really good. Margaret stayed quiet, letting her sister speak. I came to say I'm sorry, Victoria said, her eyes full of tears. I'm getting help, a therapist. I realized I was scared of Dad too. I hurt you because I didn't want to be the one being hurt. Margaret listened. She felt pain, but also something else, maybe hope. Healing takes time, she said, but it's possible. Really? Victoria asked, her voice small. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, but if you're truly trying, then I'm willing to try too. It wasn't a full reunion, but it was a beginning. A few weeks later, at another book event, Victoria stood nearby, helping quietly as a volunteer. Margaret smiled, thinking about everything that had happened, from being called a failure, to now, an author, speaker, and hope to so many. As the next reader stepped up, she signed the book and wrote her favorite words. Your voice has power, don't be silent anymore. Margaret Wilson.